I've always wanted to be a doctor. Not a physician, an MD. I didn't want that. So that means if I'm going to be a doctor, I've got to get a PhD. That kind of doctor. I wanted it purely for the prestige. You go somewhere, they announce you as Dr. Page. That throws some weight. You go to a restaurant, maybe you get a better table. They're not going to stick Dr. Page by the swinging door coming out of the kitchen. Okay, so if I was going to be Dr. Page, I had to get a PhD, which meant I had to get a master's, write a dissertation, all of that. I wasn't going to do it in English or math or history, forget any of the sciences. After some thought, I decided I'd do my graduate work in sports medicine. It seemed to work out. I got my master's in massage therapy, no problem. I was thinking, this is cake. I'm a doctor in no time. I was wrong. I was noticing that they were handing out degrees to people who had played for the school in a sport, quarterbacks and pitchers and shooting guards. I hadn't done any of that, and I began to get the feeling that this wasn't going to be as easy as I'd hoped. I had to choose a scholarly topic for my dissertation. I figured I'd need a real blockbuster to impress the judges, so to speak, so I went for it and came up with what I thought was a real beaut. My idea was that we reorganize the world around sports. You let everyone choose one sport, let's say soccer, and that's where they go to live. They live in a nation called soccer. And then there is golf and baseball, tennis, polo, badminton. Every sport has a place on the planet. And the kicker to all of this is that this plan would lead to world peace. Everyone would be happy living in the land of their favorite sport. You could even have a country called books for the nerds who like to read. If you live in swimming, there would be no reason for swimmers to go to war against the hockey players. And if you want to travel, you can. Once a year, you can visit another nation, so someone who lives in rugby can also go to gymnastics for a week or two. I thought this was an absolutely crackerjack notion. It took me a while to plan it out and write it up, about 10 years, and when I handed it in, thinking it was solid gold, my faculty advisor scanned it, looked up at me, and said he thought it was stupid, poorly written, miserably argued, and just plain wrong. It was crap, he said. He wasn't going to pass it on to the Faculty Committee on Graduate Degrees. If I wanted to be a doctor, and I did more than ever, I was going to have to work on something else. That was a big setback, let me tell you. But I got a new advisor, one with less attitude, and I started in on a new topic, this time something smaller, more modest, more manageable, namely, are they thin because they run, or do they run because they're thin? I thought this would be pretty straightforward, but once again I was badly mistaken. After 8 years of work, I'd gotten nowhere. I couldn't sort things out. It was like the ancient problem with the chicken and the egg. I asked my advisor if I could hand in all of my work, tons of interviews, so much data, and get credit for that, instead of writing a dissertation. Would that count? And she just laughed and called me a putz. I took that as a no. Boy, that hurt. But I wasn't about to quit. I had all these years in with nothing to show for it. My self-esteem was in the gutter, and I wanted to be a doctor more than ever. I'll tell you, I needed to be a doctor. I decided to give it another shot. You know what they say about the third time being the charm. But I was very careful this time in choosing a topic. I needed something that was bulletproof. I'd learned that the topic was just about everything, unless you were a former star running back, in which case they practically handed you a degree. Not that I want to sound like sour grapes or anything. After much thought, I decided to write my doctoral thesis on the following: Do chicks dig the long ball? I could take baseball's love of statistical analysis and come up with all sorts of numbers that don't really prove anything, but they look impressive, just like they do in baseball. Because, as I quickly learned, there are all kinds of chicks and they dig all sorts of things, but I also came up with this. If you take the set of guys who hit the long ball and the set of chicks who dig the guys who hit the long ball, it's almost a perfect match. They go together like cheese and crackers. but not for the reason you might think. When you crunch the numbers, it becomes clear. Guys who hit the long ball earn the big bucks, and, well, you can figure out the rest. I'm nearly ready to hand in my thesis and defend it, my oral presentation before the faculty committee. I'm a little nervous about that. I've heard they can be pretty snarky, especially if you weren't a big star in a sport for the school. I was telling this to a friend the other day. He's a doctor, not that I'm envious, and he laughed and said, "Why bother with all that? All I had to do," he said, "if I wanted to be a doctor, was send an application to this paper mill university online, and I could be a doctor of anything I wanted in no time at all, and for a lot less money than I was spending on this degree in sports medicine." I must have looked confused or stunned. I've been working on this for well over 20 years. He laughed again and slapped me on the back and said, "Hell, you don't even have to do that. That's just a formality. You want to be a doctor, just call yourself a doctor. An honorary degree. That's what I do. Nobody's ever going to call you on it, and it works great in restaurants."